Hello everyone, my name is Ben and welcome back to PASSTHEauxCORD, a channel where I didn't review much in the last month, so I am very excited to share my thoughts on some of the albums that came out last month. Pretty much everything that I vaguely thought about reviewing for a second and then didn't. There's a lot of stuff I want to bring to your attention on here, a lot of stuff that you probably have formed your own opinions and I want to give my take on as well, but with all that being said, let's just get into the very first album. KSI, Dissimulation. This new album from YouTuber KSI is actually legitimately impressive for what it is. This is normally the kind of thing that I would expect to be in the vein of some of the awful YouTuber music we've seen in the past, such as the infamous It's Everyday Bro, or really anything put out by the Pauls or Rice Gum Association. To find that a lot of this was on track with the current trap scene is unexpected at the very least, and I was happy to see that. I'm actually pretty happy for KSI for not releasing some garbage. Now, one thing to note is that KSI might not even be entirely to thank for the success of this album. Most of it is dominated by features and he doesn't handle any of the production on here. But on the other side, he had the money to get these features on here, sure, but this is still a list of very established people I never would have expected to bat an eye at someone like KSI, especially on a debut album. Lil Pump, Offset, Smokepurpp, Trippie Redd, Lil Baby, Rick Ross, all huge names, and those aren't even all of the features on here. Clearly there's something at least pretty compelling to them about KSI. The weirdest part is most of these people actually really showed up for their feature. The performances on here are actually good, or at least on par with their normal stuff. His auto-tune sing-rapping that accompanies maybe a third of his actual album, at best, isn't really doing that much for me though. In fact, I think very few of his solo cuts on here, which there are only a handful of, are really boring, but man still put out some bangers on here for sure when he wasn't trying so hard. There's some snoozers on here though as well that do really jack shit for me, and some really cringe bars like that Chewbacca thing that everybody keeps memeing on. But you got a handful of solid tracks, some good performances, and some good production. Yeah, I expected to hate this, but I'm never bitter about liking something that I didn't think I would. I'm happy for KSI for not releasing something that is totally not on par with anything else, and it's really nice to see a YouTuber putting out some legitimately decent music. This isn't perfect by any means, and there's a lot of improvement that could see fit for his next project, but as a debut, I think it's pretty solid. Smokepurpp, Florida Jit. Florida rapper Smokepurpp has come through with his 5th album, Florida Jit, after not having any well-accepted projects since his original debut, Dead Star, that feels like it came out way longer than 3 years ago. Florida Jit definitely falls short of the greatness of that debut, but it's probably his best project since. Not that that's saying much. On this record, we have a whopping 17 tracks in a mere 37 minutes, meaning we have a lot of 1 to 2 minute songs on here, and even the longer ones may as well be that short, as Purpp just fluffs it out with a lackluster hook. His formula here is not unlike the early works of X, where he made short, burst of energy type songs, think Gnarly Bastards, Sippin' Tea, Young Brats. But the thing about those tracks is that they're unique and memorable while still being fun in the moment. Purpp only has that half down, I'd say, with them being fun in the moment. At least a vast majority of these tracks make my brain go full goldfish as I forget them 30 seconds after finishing them. He raps about nothing, sometimes in an incredibly stupid fashion, has incredibly similar flows, and follows a really strict formula here, but it's so fun to listen to while it's on. That's a legitimate thing that I noticed while listening to this on multiple times. This is kind of a guilty pleasure type thing, even though I don't necessarily believe in that ideology. But this is pretty much the closest thing to it for me because it's just enjoyable. I did even slap a couple of songs onto my more high energy playlist because I had a good enough time with them. Highlights on here are Hanging Off the Roof with its best use of the short track formula, I'm Him with the solid performances from both Purpp and Denzel Curry, and Fish Scale with its truly unique production, but most everything else falls to the back outside of a few briefly noticeable moments. Ronnie J handles most of the production on here, which I am totally totally fine with. He's doing his thing with his crazy heavy distorted bass paired up with some simple but effective samples, while Purpp also is pretty much just doing his thing. It really doesn't give off that raw energy it's trying to make you believe though. It mostly feels pretty manufactured and way too samey throughout to really have a point. That energy really died with Dead Star. I'd say give it a listen and slap a couple of your favorites onto your playlists, but that's about the most enjoyment you're going to get out of this. Listening to the whole album again and just focusing on the album sounds like a chore. Iann Dior, I'm Gone. Iann is an upcoming emo rap singer, songwriter, artist that was introduced to me through his amazing track Molly from a friend, and I've been pretty down to hear more since. This isn't some kind of revolutionary moment for him, but his mass appeal isn't leaving, and it's obvious his hugely fast-growing audience is here to stay. Much of what you see on here is exactly what you'd expect from the emo trap movement scene at this point. Plenty of Juice WRLD worship, chill, stripped-back acoustic beats, very emotional lyrics, and a rap style. He's got some catchy tunes, some relatable stuff, some really likable tracks that you'll be familiar with the style of by now, and there's not a whole lot else to say about Iann's contributions that you don't already know. He's a talented addition to the genre, and I see huge potential in him, and I think that he has great songs already, including Shameless right here on this project being one of his best yet. Features on here though really work to its detriment. Lil Baby and MGK on here both sound like they don't want to be. Some really lackluster performances from both. It's not really atypical for Kelly, but we've been seeing way better from Lil Baby just recently. In 2018, this is exactly what I would expect, but in this day and age, no. So overall, if you want another helping of some emo rap tracks with a formula that you're going to be somewhat familiar with already, but you need some fresh tunes for your playlist or what have you, this is definitely up your alley. I would avoid the tracks with features on them if you're into this genre or not. Those don't really have a lot of appeal to me. Pop, smoke, shoot for the stars, aim for the moon. I want to start by saying rest in peace, Pop Smoke. It's very clear that he was headed on the path to be something pretty big in this generation. It's very tragic to see someone once again taken from us at such a young age. And that implies that this is a posthumous record. And posthumous albums are something that I've often had criticisms for because they really seem to oftentimes shit on the legacy of the very artist who they're grave robbing and making the scummy move of profiting off of the dead. There's been some decent examples and not so decent examples of this just in recent times. Mac Miller's Circles earlier this year did prove to me that a posthumous release can in fact be tasteful and feel much less like a grave robbery, as I mentioned before. While it's impossible to know exactly what Pop Smoke had planned for this record, I think they did a pretty decent job reenacting exactly how it could have went. When you look at the 19-song track list and the multitude of features on here, it really looks like quite the opposite, yet somehow most of these songs actually feel finished and well put together, and most of the features on here are people he's already worked with or seemed like he'd like to. Quavo has 3 features on here, which a lot of people are critiquing the fact of that, and I would much rather see 3 Quavo features than anybody else because he worked with him on Meet the Woo too. So did TJ, and we've got 50 Cent on here, which was obviously a huge influence, and I think Pop Smoke would have been delighted to see 50 Cent on his record. And most of them here, even if they did just show up for the check and they're being greedy, are serving up decent performances, so it's not really a hindrance to the listening experience at the very least. I wouldn't make the argument if someone said that a lot of these don't seem like they were finished when he passed away, because as far as I know, most of them weren't, and a lot of this was cobbled together after his death, but I think they did a somewhat respectable job with the content that Pop Smoke left behind. Versatility is something I was really hoping we'd have here, as almost an hour in length is kind of a lot to bear through on a project like this, but versatility we do have. You've got fast-paced bangers on here like the Quavo and Future assisted Snitching, the tracks Gangstas or 44 Bulldog as well. Then there's the more melodic slowdown cuts such as Yeah Yeah, Enjoy Yourself, and What You Know About Love. The downside to that is the much needed versatility comes with inconsistency, the double-edged sword of an album that's so long of this nature. Even the lack of consistency all throughout the record taken into consideration, I think they wrap it up so nicely, so fittingly, and respectfully at the end that I can't even really complain about it. Polo G, the GOAT. Yet another case of way better than I expected. I guess being a pessimist is really showing its benefits this month. Okay, so outside of a couple features, I am in no way afraid to admit that the only Polo G song I have heard was Pop Out, and I've heard it like a lot of times. Still, the most memorable thing about it to me is that for some fucking reason, the censored version takes out the word robbery. I've never quite understood when robbery became a cuss word, but hey, that's how it is. And calling yourself the GOAT with a cover like that isn't exactly a great indication either. But I was really taken aback a significant amount with this one because Polo G is really putting out some great stuff on this new LP. The approach to production on here is so nice. You've got really chill and somewhat depressive vibes on here that have very little in the way of modern trap flair, mostly utilizing actual guitar and piano based instrumentals. It still feels diverse enough in its somewhat longer runtime too. The production here is just surprisingly tasteful. The lyrical content Polo lays down bars about his struggle, his rise to fame, some romance-centric songs, and friends he's lost along the way, including the late Juice WRLD, rest in peace, who does have a feature here, a very nice posthumous feature, one of his only ones that's came out so far. I think that giving it to someone who was actually friends with him was a really good move, and I like the way that's executed here. The catchy songwriting of his breakout hit hasn't gone anywhere, as there's tons of catchy hooks and slick flows as well, even if I do kind of wish he'd bring on some more features to spice up the hooks a little bit. So all things considered, it's pretty hard to dislike anything on here. The only place it loses me is somewhere around the middle where it all gets that background noise quality to it and I start to zone out. While I feel like everything Polo made here is solid, if you're gonna hit us with 16 tracks, there needs to be more diversity or more standout, stranger, innovative moments that make each song stand out, or at least a select few really gain your attention back. I never mind it while it's on, but it is kind of hard to deny that at some points the songs end up combining themselves into this conglomerate mesh of similar sonic tendencies. And this wouldn't be an issue whatsoever if you shaved maybe even 4 songs off of this thing and maybe diverted the efforts of those 4 songs into just bits and pieces of the other ones. But this project does show that Polo G has a huge amount of potential doing exactly what he's doing and could come through with a excellent project next time around. I just hope that it's a little bit more concise than this one and really focuses on making these songs stand out. Armand Hammer, Shrines. Armand Hammer, the duo consisting of the 2 most mysterious rappers out there, Billy Woods and Elusive, have came through with a record that is top notch for its genre and really the cream of the crop. This dark, despondent, and depressive rap subculture is something that's been growing in popularity all throughout the previous decade, and this Armand Hammer record feels like a new peak in it. This is almost like a gathering of the most depressed voices in hip-hop to create this convention of dark realities. You've got Earl on here, who of course is pretty much the front runner of this style, not only rapping, but producing on the opener, in addition to Rap Ferreira, Kale Chris, and Pink Sifu, all huge names in this genre. And that's not to mention the actual duo themselves, which are of course huge in the genre as well, with Billy Woods putting out some great records. His album Hiding Places last year was one of my favorites. They're spitting chilling, fast-flowing, grim lyrical onslaughts filled to the very top with incredible imagery, clever wordplay, and metaphors, all with impactful purposes. They and most of the features they bring on for this one are lyrically unmatched with their impressively honed stylistic choices. All that being said, the writing is obviously very great here, but it kind of takes backseat to the amazing production. In order to really wrap up my feelings on it, I'd have to go into detail on almost every track, and obviously we don't have time for that because it is so unique, progressive, and overall impressive, and every song stands out. I was pretty keen on it for the first 4 tracks, but they were pretty typical for Billy especially. The 5th track is where I started really noticing the production on here, with the amazing drums and chords that lead through the track, and it just goes up from there with very few interruptions. Constantly impressive. The only thing this could use is a slightly better mix, I would say. That and maybe something a little bit more in the way of structure for these very great motifs that they have set up all throughout here. But if you like Earl Sweatshirt, Kelly Chris, Rap Ferreira, or Billy Woods as it stands, this album will certainly bring you joy. Or sadness, I guess, if you're into that. Teyana Taylor, the album. Teyana Taylor's new record is very improperly titled because it honestly feels much more like the 2 or 3 similar albums, or The Song, one that rivals the length of Dope Smoker but does nothing to rival the diversity of that hour-long plus song. Teyana has obvious clear talent that is nowhere near debatable. The vocals on this record are damn near flawless, and her writing isn't anything deep, of course, no pun intended, but certainly does its job. Her presence on the album reminds me of, and maybe I'm totally off base here, Abel Tesfaye or The Weeknd quite a bit. More Kissland era than anything else, I suppose. The very vivid, sexually explicit descriptions paired over glamorous R&B beats, and even the singing style quite a bit of the time really reminds me of The Weeknd, though. A lot less drugs and darkness and a lot more sex, I'd say, on here at least. At 23 songs long, pretty much every song is not even just in sound, but in topic, way too similar. There feels like so much filler. I feel like you could cut off half of this album and it still would feel like it has filler. The other problem is just that it really lacks in song structure. If there's any kind of chorus, it's pretty much just a repetitive refrain, and most of them are just all verse with no structure, and yet still break 4 minutes most of the time. So not only are a lot of the songs on here filler and pretty clear streaming fodder, a lot of the songs themselves are for whatever reason padded out with filler. Really kind of makes for a nothing burger of an album if you ask me. While there's few highlights, I guarantee you I am never listening to this whole thing again. That's just simply not going to happen. Most of what this proves, though, is that Teyana is incredibly talented, and if she really wanted to, she could make an amazing album in the future. You would have to make this way more concise for me to feel anywhere near that positive with it, though. There is good songwriting, there is clear talent, there's good instrumentals and production all throughout, but I can't bear to ever listen to this all the way through again. It's objectively okay, but subjectively, this does not appease my attention span, I'm sorry. Bauer! Planets! Man! Electronic music producer Bauer has come through still sporting way too many vowels, bringing a fittingly apocalyptically titled full-length Planets Mad. Going into this with the first 2 tracks, I was thinking that we were going in with feelings of the awful situations the planet has seemingly put us into, as the title would imply. But past this title track, the despondent nature seemingly evaporates. But Baauer still serves up a lot of bangers on here. While some of the tropes on here are tropes that have been around for years and years with the electronic music genres, this is still one of the most entertaining electronic music releases this year so far. It doesn't have a lot to go against, but still, there's a lot on here that you totally expect going into it. For the sake of brevity, if you like Bauer or the genre type that he comes from, this is 100% for you, but if not, steer clear, as nothing on here is going to change your mind on it and stand out as very different than other things you've heard. Unique? Not entirely, but it is really fun, really nice on the ears, and just some decent electronic music content to fill your vibe. That's a sentence right there. Phoebe Bridgers' Punisher. I really thought about covering this one when it started gaining hype, especially since I really like the song titles and the beautiful cover art, but I never really got around to covering it in a full review, mostly for the reason that I haven't heard any of Phoebe's other music, so I didn't know what to expect whatsoever. I was one of not all that many who really liked the Maggie Rogers record last year, and even if I did, I realize it had issues. This seems like that, but without those issues. The nostalgic, romantic, and depressed moods and emotions that this album takes on are really heavy and get you in whatever feeling Phoebe wants you to be in right away. The writing on here is what I suppose you could call charmingly blunt, while not really nuancing certain ideas, but still having a way of saying it that is really smooth and comes across emotionally impactful. Sonically, this album is so beautiful too, but beautiful in its simplicity. It's all really stripped back. I certainly wouldn't call anything on here loud outside of maybe the final moments of the record. The atmosphere on here is nowhere near the type of atmosphere I'd normally give a lot of credit to and normally am really into. Rather than being otherworldly and experimental, this album feels like going for a drive out in the country with the fall breeze blowing on your face through the cracked windows and smelling the fall air, the sappy texture to everything. I feel the loneliness, the feelings of disillusionment, themes of love and longing for the past. I really get what this album is conveying to me, and I love that about it. Great stuff. Definitely the best album of 2020 so far to go and have a cry to. I will argue with you on that. More jewelry. True Opera. Moor Mother and Mental Jewelry collaborate under their duo project simply called More Jewelry and have delivered a pretty unique project for the times. Instrumentally, this record is both very dense and stripped back. While it's very raw and unrefined feeling, very spur of the moment, it also gets really noisy and textured to some chaotic points. It's really a vein of punky noise rock that I love the sound of and haven't heard a lot of. It's the very, once again, unrefined qualities of the absolute energy of these tracks given an old school punk vibe while rolling on some modern experimental and noise rock trends too. I hear some types of sound I'd compare to Black Midi Schleigenheim and HMLTD's West of Eden, both some of my favorite records of recent times and honestly of ever. So I love hearing more experimental rock that takes a couple cues from it. This LP is a pure shot of punk rock experimental adrenaline. With its short runtime and its very punk attitude and ideals, it really kicks some serious ass for what it is, and it goes all in on it. What I feel slightly sacrificed for this cocaine-like track listing though is lasting impact, which does feel kind of lacking. As I've been describing the creative and counterculture sonic stylings as you'd expect from the lyrics, they take a similar tone to the sound, but instead of real messages on here, you get a lot more in the way of refrains that get their point across, but not a lot else to add to the conversation. You're not really getting any beautifully crafted socio-political commentary on here. And I feel like you really could from the pair, as they clearly have strong ideas and opinions, and it's just too simplistic sometimes in layman's terms. This shows huge potential, which I feel like I've been saying a lot in this episode, but it does. Once again, I feel like this could definitely be made into something absolutely amazing. For now, though, it's really, really good for what it is, and I think if you're into noise rock, experimental punk, anything like that in that vein, this is definitely going to be right up your alley. I like it quite a bit, and I'm definitely going to return to it when I need some really fast-paced, aggressive music. Backxwash, God has nothing to do with this. Leave him out of it. Black metal trap is never a genre tag that I figured that I would be implying or proposing, but damn, it really works well for what it is. While stylistically that wraps it up pretty damn well, that doesn't begin to describe everything that goes down in this incredibly dense LP that doesn't even poke the 30-minute mark. The production here is just fucking nuts. Absolutely insane. Huge dark atmospheres that feel like walls of a catacomb dripping in blood are vividly demonstrated through this sonically crushing release. The opening cut samples a man screaming, "God no, please help me," as part of the fucking beat. That plays through the whole song. Just to give you an idea of how demented this thing is sometimes in its sound. Aesthetically, most of this album feels ripped from the hands of a demonic entity and played on the guitars and synthesizers of musical slave imps. And its very brief runtime, it just doesn't fuck around either. Backxwash comes in, does her thing, and leaves with intentions clearly stated and minds shattering under the weight of the music. Production qualities aside, this album has some great messages that aren't the same satanic edgelord bullshit that you'd really be expecting. There is a lot of religious commentary, especially in the progression and narrative of the sampling, some occult imagery that goes very against the Christian ideals. The God can't save you thematic feeling is dense on here, and even though that is an edge you could certainly get a deep cut from, I eat that shit up and I love the dark grit to it. But on far more serious notes, on here Backxwash talks a lot about her hardships and struggles as a black transgender woman, but also engages in some heavily anti-normal tendencies being posed as this outcasted dark soul on a mission to fuck shit up. Yeah, this is 110% worth your time if it sounds vaguely interesting to you. It's worth your time even if it isn't sounding anything near interesting to you. It's 21 minutes. What do you have to lose? I think a lot of people are going to find this very interesting. I think it's a really cool project. Now, to wrap this up, I am going to go ahead and just run through a few albums that I either didn't get all the way through, don't have that much in the way of thoughts for, but do want to bring to your attention for one reason or another. Dope Body, Homebody is the first one of these. I'm just not stoned enough for this, I think, because every time I put it on, it just seems like something is off. Like, either there's a vocal melody that just isn't matching up right for me, something sounds detuned, and I understand that might just be the experimental quality of the record, but I genuinely feel like this would sound a lot better intoxicated. I don't dislike it, but I just really feel like it might not be for my very analytical style of listening to music. It's very abstract in nature, and I do like it for what it is. It has some really cool ideas. I wouldn't recommend against checking it out. Bones and Lyson have come through with a duo project of sorts. Bones is interacting with another human being, which he doesn't usually do, and usually when he does it, results in a strange, at best, project that is just really trying some unique things, but not necessarily executing it quite as well, much like the previous project that he put out just 2 months ago. This guy drops another project every time you turn around, by the way. But on here, this is really just exactly what you would expect from Bones at this point. Lyson, I have no idea who he is. He could be Bones for all I know. Honestly, maybe this man is just Bones, because I cannot find any information on this dude, but he does a pretty good job here too, more or less imitating Bones, to be completely honest with you. But either way, if you like the sesh sound, especially Bones type of music, this is still worth your time. There's gonna be some tracks on here that you like. There's some on here though that are really strange. I think the track was called Skeleton Love, I want to say. That one's really odd lyrically. It's something along that lane. You'll notice it when you see it. HAIM Women in Music 3. I'm not touching this one because I really don't want to listen to the first two. Sorry. And there's this Dalai Lama album that came out, and now part of me is like, dude, this is really weird and cool, just do a review on it, but this kind of music doesn't appeal to me anyway. If you want some sort of meditation music, this seems fine for what it is, I guess, but all things considered, the Offset and Gunna features were really out of place. Finally, this new G-Eazy project. No! No. No. Nope. No. Mm-mm. God, no. 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 And final thoughts on it. Fuck no. If there's anything that I missed, go ahead and drop it in the comment section below. I would be very happy to give some thoughts on it. Let me know what you thought of these albums down in the comment section below. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Drop a like on the video if you did like what you saw today, and subscribe to the channel for more music related content coming your way. Turn the bell on for notifications on that very same thing as well. But that is just about going to wrap it up for this one, and I will see you in the next video.